Good morning. So today I'm going to explicate the different schools of literary theory, beginning from Aristotle to eco-criticism. As the area is so vast and complex, I would begin with the father of Western literary criticism, Aristotle. So Aristotle was not a professional literary critic, but he was a philosopher. He wrote a book called Poetics, in which he discusses the nature and purpose of epic poetry, tragedy, and so on. Aristotle, in his taxonomy of tragedy, taxonomy is a word from biology which means classification, prescribes certain rules for writing tragedy and what qualifications a tragic hero should have. He uses a lot of Greek concepts which have been translated by Greek scholars into English. So we understand from Aristotle's writings that there is a symbiotic relationship between literature and literary criticism. When did literary criticism or literary theory begin? Literary criticism or literary theory began when literature began. Aristotle commented and theorized on epic poetry based on his reading of Homer's epics, the Iliad and Odyssey, written in the Greek language. And he theorized on the taxonomy of tragedy by studying and watching the plays of the great Greek tragedian Sophocles. So according to Aristotle, tragedy is superior to comedy because it asks certain fundamental questions about the universe and human life. What are the characteristics of a tragic hero? According to Aristotle, the first quality is spaudeiou. Spaudeiou means that the tragic hero must be a person of high social standing, of a serious disposition, not totally morally perfect, because in that case he would not fall from his high position, but someone who has an unknown defect, known to others but unknown to him, which Aristotle called hamartia. Hamartia is a tragic flaw or defect. For example, if you look at Shakespeare's great tragic heroes, Macbeth's hamartia is overambition. Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, his hamartia or defect, tragic flaw, is procrastination. Othello, in the play Othello, is a general. And what is his tragic flaw? Suspicion, which finally destroys his wife. And King Lear, his tragic flaw is misjudgment of his own children's character. So from spaudeiou, we go to peripeteia. Spaudeiou, hamartia, and then the third quality is peripeteia. Now, peripeteia is an irreversible slide into misfortune by the tragic hero because of the wrong choices based on this fundamental character flaw. And once peripeteia occurs, it is not possible for the tragic hero to regain his exalted position that he had before. And then comes anagnorisis. Anagnorisis in Greek means self-realization. Self-realization comes very late. Recognition of his mistake. But that self-realization cannot restore his fortunes. So the play, the tragedy, ends in the death and defeat of the hero, which Aristotle calls a catastrophe, a total defeat or destruction, which produces a psychological effect in the viewers of the play, which is called by Aristotle catharsis. Catharsis is the feelings of pity and fear the audience experience when they watch this tragic hero, a man, a king, a general or a prince from a high social position, fall into disaster and dies. So Aristotle's theories still are valid according to modern critics. Aristotle was the first psychological critic of drama. He also theorized that art is mimesis, a reflection of nature, which includes human nature. It imitates nature and human nature and increases our understanding of life and the physical environment around us. Another great classical critic is Longinus. Longinus lived much later in the 4th century AD, and he wrote a treatise called On Sublimity. He said the primary characteristic of great literature is sublimity, which is the grand style, which creates a sort of ecstasis in the reader, which is Longinus's theory of transport. And then you have the other famous classical critic, Horace. Horace wrote in Latin, and he said the primary function of literature is dulce et utile, that is, to instruct and edify. Then when we come to English criticism, the father of English criticism is John Dryden, who first used the word criticism, by which he defined it as any formal discussion of literature in print. Ben Jonson, the Elizabethan, theorized on comedy. He theorized on the comedy of humors based on medieval physiology, where he says that one particular character trait, when exaggerated, results in comedy. And then we have Dryden and Pope, the neoclassicists. Following that, we have Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold talking about the touchstone theory, where any modern literature has to be compared for its worthiness with classical literature or the great writers of the past. And then you have the modern schools of literary theory, like Russian formalism, new criticism, the Anglo and American variety, and then you have the French school of structuralism, and then you have post-structuralism, followed by the American school of new historicism, cultural materialism, and the ever-favorite 21st century school of literary criticism or theory, eco-criticism, which talks about the relationship between environment and literature. So as you have seen, it's a very vast area, and today I have concentrated only on Aristotle's criticism. Thank you.